You're listening to Media Savvy Moms with Melody and Marilyn. Open, honest conversations about parenting and pornography. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Media Savvy Moms. Today, we are tackling a question from a listener. They wrote in, how can I phrase tricky topics in a way that doesn't make my kids feel weirded out or under attack? So we are going to answer that question today. We're going to talk about 3 different ways to bring up the topic of pornography with our child or teen. Our goal is to give you a way to do that without being scary or cringy or making them feel weird. So we're going to do 3 different ways, and this is actually a preview of a download, a free PDF that we have called 10 Conversation Starters for the Other Sex Talk. So after we give you this preview of the 3 of these 10, we'll give you a way in our notes to download this pretty PDF.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this show, this episode, because I know most parents know they need to talk to their kids about pornography. We just get stuck on how to do it. It feels really uncomfortable or awkward for many of us. It's the elephant in the room. We know it's out there, but we don't want to talk about it. And a lot of people really wonder when they should start the conversation. And that's pretty simple for us at Media Savvy Moms. We say just start today. And everything that we're going to talk about today is how to get that conversation going if you haven't already done so, or new ways to do it if you have and you're like, what do I do now?
Yep. So the 3 points that we're going to touch on are 1, be honest. 2, use media messages around you to start the conversation. And 3, talk about brain science. So this first one, be honest. So are you nervous to talk to your kids about pornography? Tell them, be honest with them. Kids will be happy to know that you're human. It's okay to be vulnerable, and it can actually go a long way to bonding with your kids and building trust when you're honest with your kids. Good stuff comes when you want to open doors of communication.
This is so true for me. If I take myself back 5 years or so, I really was the parent that wasn't comfortable talking to my kids about sex, let alone pornography. How do I do it? And I had this, we already had experienced pornography coming into the home and having struggles with it. And I was like, something has to change here. Something has to give. And I realized that something was me. And I had to prepare my kids better to deal with all the yuck that's out there on the internet. But I had honestly had no idea where to start. And I was so panicked that I would say the wrong thing, that I would make them just feel, you don't want to go up and say, so how's your porn problem, or what do you think of pornography, and have it like out of the blue with no context, no framework for that having been built up. And so I did exactly what you've just said. I told my kids, I don't know, we probably had some awkward conversation about pornography, but somewhere, whether it's beginning, middle, or end, I told them, look, this isn't easy for me. I'm nervous to talk to you about it. Like, I did not have that nice relaxed face. My body language was so tense. And I said, like, just cut me some slack. And it worked wonders. My kids were, oh, okay, mom is
A human being.
human. Yeah, mom is human, and we love mom. Generally, we love mom. So let's give her a break today.
Right. And the thing is, we're not pros, and our kids are not pros at dealing with this subject. Like, this is a tough subject, but we build up ourselves as a team, right? We talk about being a coach, not the police, right? When it comes to these things. And we talked about that analogy of the police officer, even us, like when we're not doing anything wrong, and there's a police officer on the side of the road when you're driving, that you
Hmm.
screech on the brakes.
Yeah.
Right. We don't want to be the police. We want to be the coach. We want to be walking alongside our kids and we want to be helping them. And that's where this point of be honest, like bring yourselves down to, we want to bring ourselves down to our kids' level and be like, listen, like we're tackling this together. We're doing this together. Like go team, right?
Yeah, and that team mentality, what I found are that children are very forgiving.
Mm-hmm.
You make a mistake, they're going to be the first ones to have trust in you again. You know, they don't hold grudges the way we do as adults. And that my bravery in talking about pornography, even when I was really nervous to do it, or talking about anything that made me really nervous to do it, if I told them that, then that inspired them to be brave and ask me more questions and bring up topics that they otherwise might not have done because they could see that I did it. Doesn't matter. Mom was uncomfortable. She got through it. To tell the tale.
Right, true. These are actually points that we brought up on our show, Get Off the Fence, which was really early in our podcast. That I think the point we made was admit out loud things that feel uncomfortable, right? This is just part of starting the conversation. And, we are human. And you also made the point that kids can be relieved that we're the ones bringing it up, that they don't have to be the one to bring it up. If they have questions, that we're the big, brave ones and we're going to be the one bringing up the topic.
Absolutely. Like, we want to try to talk to our kids about this before they encounter pornography, but imagine the relief if your kids have seen some material that they know in their gut is inappropriate, and all of a sudden you've put that language on the table, that conversation on the table, and they're like, "Oh, we're good to talk about this," or "My mom gets it. My mom gets that that stuff is out there. It's not a secret that I have to keep."
Right. And also, to that point of being human, we have talked about sometimes we're going to screw up. Sometimes we're not going to have that perfect reaction. We had our show. Um, I freaked out when my child talked to me about porn. Now what?
Yeah.
And we came back to that conclusion. Our kids are forgiving. It's okay to make a mistake. It's okay not to have that perfect, calm demeanor and great body language that we always talk about wanting to have in the articles, in the shows about talking to our kids about
Be
pornography
that
because
really cool parent, which something, you've mentioned that this isn't a big deal for you. It never was. You're that cool parent.
I'm that loud, obnoxious parent. I'm that one that is like, all right, let's bring it on. Let's talk about sex. And my kids are like, Mom, what? This is so awkward. And I'm like, bring it on. Let's do awkward. And that's okay because, Marilyn and I were talking
Are you
about,
ever afraid of your children?
uh, my, I don't know. Is that a trick
I'm not
question?
afraid of my children. And it's just the idea of bringing this up way back when was terrifying to me.
And that's fine because we're all different and we all are different parents. We have different parenting styles. I'm not afraid of my children. Sometimes I'm afraid of my children. I guess I'm not afraid of talking about sex. I just like it's just not an intimidating topic. And I think that all comes you and I have talked about. This comes back to the culture around sex in our homes where we grew up.
Yeah.
It was just not a taboo thing in my family at all ever. It was like, whatever, let's talk about sex, what's going on. And,
Yeah,
it's
and for so many of us, we're just breaking through that barrier where this is the first time that this is the first generation of generations that are like, oh yeah, this has to be done. Set aside all inhibitions. We got to do this. Somehow we got to get it out, right?
right. And we were talking about how I don't remember having the first sex talk with my kids. Like it was just always like an ever present thing. And
Uh-huh.
so I don't remember having that prep time of like, breathe, okay, I can do this. But some parents do,
That was me. That was me. And especially for this talk that included pornography. It's like there I can't give you the date on the calendar, but there was probably a date on the calendar that I had that boop, that light bulb moment that said to this is no longer a secret. We have to have this conversation and we have to have it regularly. And it, somehow Somehow it has to become natural, but it's not going to start that way today.
And that's okay. We all have our different parenting styles and ways. And you guys just go for it. Doesn't matter. It's not right way or wrong way. Just go with what you got. So that's great start to the conversation. That's our first point. Be honest. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about our second point, and that is using media messages to start this conversation.
People are always asking us, what is the best way to start the sex talk with my kids? And I love to recommend the book 30 Days of Sex Talks by Educate and Empower Kids. This is such a great book for so many reasons, one of which is that it's divided into 3 age-appropriate volumes. One is ages 3 to 7, one ages 8 to 11, and one for ages 12 and up. Because let's face it, you are not going to have the same sex talks with your 3-year-old as you are with your 16-year-old. 30 Days of Sex Talks contains the most meaningful discussions you're going to have with your child, made easy. Inside the book is a code that will allow you to download topic cards that you can print out and place in strategic locations like a mirror, the refrigerator, or in your pocket to remind you and your child to start talking. They've made it easy to engage your child in conversations about relationships, affection, anatomy, boundaries, predators, online dangers, and many other vital topics. Look for the 30 Days of Sex Talks on Amazon or visit the Educate and Empower Kids website at educateempowerkids.org.
And we're back, and we are talking about ways to bring up tricky topics like pornography with our kids without making them feel weirded out. And we have our free guide, 10 ways to talk about these things with our kids. And we're giving you a teaser. We're talking about 3. The first segment, we talked about how to be honest. And now we're going to talk about using media messages to bring up this topic.
Media makes it so easy for us to segue into the topic of pornography or, there's so much hypersexualized media out there. So whether you're watching a movie as a family, like these are often family shows or TV shows that have, references and jokes to pornography.
Or even like the commercial breaks.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so going back to who I was as a parent 5 years ago, and we hardly watch TV with commercials anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Thank goodness, because I was like, change the channel, change the channel. We can't watch that commercial. I would do anything I could to avoid this conversation. And I still struggle with this a bit, but when stuff comes up, it's like a teachable moment. How am I going to then help my kids to think critically about the messages that are being shared? So, like, if they're talking about pornography in a sitcom, what impact does this have? Like, ask your kids, what impact would that joke have on adults? What about kids? What about kids your age? Like, get them thinking differently.
Yeah, definitely. And it's everywhere, right? So I think this is the easiest way to bring up pornography because it's everywhere. We're driving past billboards with the plastic surgery. I mean, there are boobs hanging out on the side of the road now, right? And there are magazines in the waiting rooms when we're at the doctor's office, and they're walking through, of course, the ever lovely Victoria's Secret in the middle of the mall when we're walking by with our kids, right? And we talked about
Yes.
too when we talked on our Pornhub episode about the huge billboard in the middle of Times Square talking about basic masturbation in the middle of Times Square in New York City.
Yeah.
So it's everywhere. And I think it's the easiest way because it's not sneaky. It's not like catching your child looking at pornography. It's not it's easy to blame it on society instead of making your child feel shamed or making your child feel on the spot. And to answer the parent's question, how do we bring it up without making your kid feel weird? How easy is it
Yes.
to say, what about that TV show instead of what about you or your behavior,
So
right?
give us an example, because
Okay,
how would you
so
do this?
how would I do this?
Yeah.
Well, actually, we were just walking through the mall a couple of weeks ago with with my little boy, walking through, and Victoria's Secret's right there, and we got into a conversation about why is this not appropriate? Do you think that it's appropriate? Um, how do you think those girls feel? How do you think a girl feels when she's walking past
So
this?
did your son bring it up or did you bring it up?
It's funny because sometimes my kids will bring it up because, like I said, this is an ongoing conversation with us. It's not a new thing. It's not like it's the first time we've walked past Victoria's Secret and the first time I'm bringing it up.
Hmm.
Sometimes they'll say, "Oh, look away, look away," But sometimes, especially now that my kids are getting older, because now I have tweens. I have a 9 and a 13. We can have philosophical discussions about these things. And it's great. I think it's great to make them think critically about how these images affect different people as they're walking by, what they think about it, what my children think about it, what kind of an effect does it have on society. We can have these deep discussions and it really gets them thinking about the bigger context and about the effects on them personally. So, I mean, maybe this sounds like super idealized, right? But it's a real thing, and I love too. We were talking about there are some great materials out there from Educate and Empower Kids that talk about body image and also about media literacy. Specifically, the one that we love at our house is Petra's Power to See.
Yep.
And it is specifically aimed at just like this. It's about a story about a little girl on the train with her dad, and this is what they do. They go and they look at all the media around them, and then they take it apart and they talk about why the media does it this way and what are the tools they're trying to use, like Photoshop or advertising to try to get kids to want to buy that bike, or and um it's just a beautifully done.
Because it's everywhere and it's constant, right?
Hmm.
How do we balance like having the discussion and not versus not having, like, when do you know when to have the conversation and when to just let it go for that day? Or is it
Ah,
constant?
like, do we do this every single time?
Because when would you ever stop talking about it? It might get a bit much, right?
Well, the thing is, at least at my house, because it is an ongoing conversation, sometimes I've learned to let my kids take the lead. And sometimes they will, and sometimes they won't. And we're parents. We know our kids. We know how to follow our gut. We've known since they were teeny, right? We can take um, advice from other people on parenting, from diaper changing and strollers to talking about pornography, right?
Mhm.
Everybody else is going to have their different answer about how often to burp them and how often to talk about porn. But everybody's going to be different from parent to parent. My kids, they'll bring it up themselves. Some
Cool.
kids won't bring it up themselves. My little boy, especially since we read Petra, and he really gets into the part about Photoshop. There's a great picture of a model and her real face, and then her face on a billboard when she's been photoshopped and fixed. Now he'll look at billboards and he'll be like, "Ah, Mom, that is so Photoshop."
Yeah, and I think that's really important that we're distinguishing between healthy body image and
Mm-hmm.
what these hypersexualized images are doing to healthy body image. And
Right. But it all ties in together too,
mhm.
because pornography is those kind of images on steroids, really.
Yeah. Now I have a thought, and I one mom talked to me um, t- about her little boy, and she's had many conversations with them about advertising and Photoshop, and yet at the end of the day, he says, "But mom, those women are beautiful, and I like looking at them."
Oh,
Hmm.
it's true. It's true though, but that's intentional, right? That's that's why they do it. because they want us to look at it. And I was thinking about that and how there's a study, the cardboard butterfly experiment by Nicholas Tinbergen. What is how do you say his name?
I think
Nicholas
it's
Tinbergen.
I think it's
Um,
Tinbergen.
Tinbergen. So the
We
cardboard
don't know,
butterfly.
but he won a Nobel Prize for it.
So there was an experiment that had to do with pornography, right?
Well, it had to do with social behavior,
Yes.
but it applies to our response to pornography.
Right.
So he's a scientist, and he was trying to study the laws of attraction. Um, Forgive me if I get it a little wrong here, but he would put out fake butterflies, but he would exaggerate their markings. So,
Hmm.
as we know, animals are attracted to other animals because of markings, because of scent, because of all sorts of things. And so, whatever it was that attracted um, that particular species to their mate, he exaggerated it. And he found that all the butterflies in this particular experiment would ignore the real butterflies and fly and try to mate with the cardboard butterfly. And if you can't see me because you're listening, I'm actually flapping my wings, my hands like I'm a butterfly here as I'm telling this story. So I'm just laughing at myself. But they so pornography is like that in that it's called a super stimulus,
Hmm.
and it exaggerates. It takes what's natural and normal and exaggerates it and blows it out of proportion, and it affects our brain, which leads us into the third portion of our discussion here today. Because our brain just has these defaults in it, like it knows what it's attracted to,
Hmm.
and it wants bigger, better of that. And that's why that little boy is still going to be attracted to those images, even when we can explain why those images aren't real or why they're dangerous.
Right. I think this is important too, because when we're explaining to our children about the science, that it helps to remove some of that guilt and shame
Mhm.
too, because we understand if they see pornography that they're going to be attracted and that it's going to be tantalizing and it may affect their body and they may have reactions that can be confusing to children, that they feel like they know that it's bad because we've taught them it's bad, but then they have these reactions in their body because it's stimulating. Um,
The images are bad, but it can make them feel good. That's how they can explain it in their way. There's something about the images or about pornography that makes kids, anyone, excited and in a way feel good. So it's
right.
very
And that
confusing.
it is confusing and it's an important part of the conversation as parents that we understand this science and that we can explain to our kids that with this science and so that it becomes a very factually based conversation. And so they go, oh, it's because I'm a human being. It's not because I'm a bad person.
Because I have a
So,
brain, and that brain has different functions,
and
right?
chemicals,
Hmm.
right? And it's a chemical reaction. And that's what the pornographers do on purpose.
Yeah.
They want to stimulate the chemicals in our brain. And so, I mean, this is a great, we talk about using brain science all the time when we're having our conversations in our shows. We talked about it in bad advice about pornography, where we talked about when people give us bad advices about parents, how do we stand up for ourselves and teaching our kids about pornography. Um, Coming back to the science is a great place to be when we're talking to our kids because kids are just curious about their body, just in general, not even just about sex and pornography, but just in general. Little kids are just want to know, like, I'm in this shell. How does it work?
That's right. So when you talk, yeah, getting back to how do we introduce this topic? Like just talk to your kids about their bodies, talk to them about their brains, make it age appropriate, whether they're, whether they're tween or younger. Sometimes we forget to talk about the amazing brain that we have. we focus so much on the external features, like, oh, I'm amazing at running, or oh, I'm really good at, or I'm pretty, or
Mm.
all of those external things. And I sat down with one of my kids one day and said, what do you like, what's the most amazing part about your body? And I was leading him with questions, but eventually we got to the brain. Like, we forget to talk about how incredible that brain is.
Yeah.
And just talking about it that way was exciting to him. And then you can lead into discussions about how the brain is susceptible to addiction, or the brain is susceptible to um, being influenced by ideas and images.
Right, definitely. And there are great resources too out there for both teens and younger kids that we have recommended before and that we'll just give you a little refresher on. For teens, we've talked about the Brain Heart World documentary documentary from Fight the New Drug. And the brain section is obviously a lot about brain science, and Fight
Yeah.
the New Drug is awesome about using science to back up.
It's a
Uh,
fun resource for that age group. I'd say maybe even as young as 11. Watch it first so that you know what you're getting into. But they use that teen humor, very appropriate throughout, and it's entertaining as well as educational.
right, and lighthearted. Like we were
Hmm.
talking about, Brain Heart World is just a really light, really uplifting documentary, and that's super cool.
Yeah.
And then for younger kids, we love Good Pictures, Bad Pictures. It talks about the thinking brain versus the feeling brain. I love that analogy of the ice cream truck.
Hmm.
Of when you hear the ice cream truck coming, your feeling brain goes, I want ice cream, and you want to run for the ice cream truck, and your thinking brain goes, wait, I shouldn't run into the street,
Or
right?
wait, I should save room for dinner. But you
And
don't have
that,
to read it with those voices, but it's an awesome book.
but if you're a cool parent, you'll read it with awesome voices.
It's really good. It's like, it takes this whole discussion from a science based conversation, and it starts out talking about what is addiction, and then it talks about um, why the brain is attracted to certain pictures.
Hmm.
And when I read that with our boys, we had just finished learning about this thinking brain and this feeling brain, and we went to a doctor's appointment. And while we were sitting in the examining room waiting for, I don't know, to look at a wart growing on a toe or something like that, we're looking around and we've got the posters, the cross section of the body with the whole anatomy, but focused on the brain because it's probably about heart and stroke disease. And my son says, where's the thinking brain? Like, where's the feeling brain? Like, he was totally into it. He had remembered all those details from the book, and they stuck with him. So wonderful, wonderful resource.
I love that. I can, we've all been there, sitting in the doctor's office, waiting and looking at those posters. I love that. So, so yeah, the Good Pictures, Bad Pictures, and there's actually a video too, based on that thinking brain, feeling brain, called What Should I Do When I See Pornography? And we'll put links to all of these resources, the Brain Heart World and the Good Pictures, Bad Pictures, and the What Should I Do When I See Pornography video. Great resources to watch with your kids about brain science, very accessible. And then I
So you're
actually,
not alone. You don't
no.
have to have this conversation all by yourself. There are resources to help you do that. And that's another thing.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're here for you. And if you ever
Mhm.
need help, I mean, we have these great ideas about how to start these conversations, but if you ever feel like you need resources or you want help or you want articles, you can always reach out to us. You can always email us or reach out to us in Instagram or Facebook, and we are happy, more than happy to send you specific resources or
Absolutely.
ideas. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I think that we have pretty much hit on our 3 points. We've been talking about how to be honest with our kids and how to use media messages um, around us to start these conversations and how to focus on the brain science to talk to our kids. So,
This is just a few ideas, and we have a whole bunch more, and we want to give them to you in our free guide, our free PDF. So my challenge to our listeners is to actually download that guide and pick one of the 10 suggestions and to have that conversation, whether it's your first conversation or your 31st conversation with your child in the next 3 days. Because we find that if you don't have that conversation right away after you've listened and you're all pumped, probably you're not going to have it. So in the next 3 days, you've got 3 days to do this challenge.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you like what you heard, remember to subscribe. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram, or email us directly at mediasavvymoms@gmail.com. We'd love to get your feedback.